Their audio. And it is pause. It is recording.
Good morning, class 20-7, and welcome to the first of the Women's in Leadership panel. I am Tech Sergeant Bruce, the instructor for Flight 2, and your facilitator for this morning's panel. Today, we'll get to talk to these Chief Master Sergeants and get their thoughts and experiences on topics regarding women in leadership. Women have progressed into leadership roles more than they have in the past, but that has not come without lessons or room for growth. We will begin the panel with 45 minutes of polled questions dealing with topics some women experience in the workplace. And then we'll go into about 20 to 30 minutes of your questions. So if you have any for the Chiefs, please make sure you put it into the chat for them. Today we have the honor of speaking with your class mentor, Chief Master Sergeant Amber B. Mitchell. Chief Mitchell is the Senior Enlisted Leader, Directorate of Personnel and Logistics, Headquarters United States Space Force, Pentagon, Washington, D.C. Chief Master Sergeant Kimberly Pollard. Chief Pollard is the Command Chief, National Air and Space Intelligence Center, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. We have Chief Master Sergeant Melissa Owens. Chief Owens is the Group Superintendent of the 659th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Group at Fort Meade, Maryland, and Chief Master Sergeant Michelle Castro. Chief Master Sergeant Castro is the Superintendent of the 42nd Medical Group, Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. And unfortunately, Chief Castro will have to leave us early, but we will have an opportunity to garner some of her experience and lessons learned. So at this time, I would like to give the Chiefs an opportunity to tell us a little about themselves. So Chief Mitchell, I would like to start with you.
Hey everybody again. Hey, thanks for having this panel. I really do appreciate the opportunity for any of the female leaders in the Space Force and in the Air Force to get together and talk about our experiences. One, just because that opens up some of those crucial conversations that we have talked about previously in this class, but two, just gives you an opportunity to maybe ask some questions that you might not have been able to ask before. Maybe some of you have been in units where you didn't have a female leader, whether it's commander or first sergeant or chief, but this is your opportunity to have some of those conversations and ask those kind of questions. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Chief Pollard, is there anything you'd like to say?
Good morning, everyone. Chief Pollard here, calling from Ohio. Just want to thank you, Sheppard NCO Academy, for the invitation. I'm glad to be here to talk to you all about any and everything, but especially women in leadership. So there are some things that I'm going to get to in the questions, but I will just say that I've been a single mom, I've been married, I've been fill in the blank. So how has that affected me? You know, some days it was a walk in the park, some days it wasn't really. You know, that's what resilience is. And so if you all have anything that deals with that or just trying to go through leadership, I'm here for that. And I'm here for any and all the conversations. So just let me know what you all need. And I actually can't wait till we get to these questions.
Chief Owens.
Good morning. Same, I'm super excited to be here. Super happy that you guys asked me to be a part of this panel. I think it's super important that we have this discussion and talk about the topics that were in these questions today with the ongoing discussion about diversity and inclusion across the Air Force. Also, I've been a single parent a lot of my career and have an EFMP child. So, you know, it's been same thing like Chief Pollard, it's been easy times and hard times. So if you have questions about that and how to make it through, and there's a lot of people who wonder how to be a chief and be a single parent, but it's possible. So just look forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Chief Castro.
Hello. So hello from Maxwell Air Force Base. At some point you'll come through here. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. I love doing these panels. It's kind of funny that I think we all have a common theme. So I am an EFMP family as well with my husband. So I welcome the questions and talking about getting to this point and having a spouse that's disabled. So yeah, I'm excited and happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, ladies. So the first question we like to start with is, have you ever given an order that was brushed off because of your gender? If so, what did you do to handle that situation? Chief Mitchell, we'll start with you.
So I'll say that I haven't ever given an order where I felt like it was brushed off. You know, we talked about relationships. I know that's very important with everybody. So whatever, to get to know your people, and always try to talk to them ahead of time and get so they're comfortable with me. So if we ever have to do, I'll help you out. But I haven't ever experienced that. But I have had some friends who have experienced that as well, whether it's overt or otherwise. And I think that that's one of those things where you just address it up front, right? And always just be honest. I think the more you kind of push it under the rug or you don't address it, then that's you accepting that as you know, if you're witnessing to any of those kind of things, that you have to be that strong, courageous person to say, hey, did you realize that was going on? And let's have a conversation about that and what that means to be a military member and what that means to be a good teammate. And let's show some good examples for everybody else in the unit.
Okay, thank you for that, ma'am. Chief Pollard?
All right. Can everyone hear me? I'm sitting outside, so it's a little loud. Okay. So have I ever given an order that was brushed off because of my gender? So I actually come from a male-dominated career field. So it was pretty normal for me to be one of the only females at the table, or one of the only females telling someone what to do. Before this, I was at 2 assignments ago. I was at Creech Air Force Base, and in fact, that's where me and Michelle know each other from our Nevada connection. Hey, and I had talked to airmen who had told me that either I was the first female superintendent that they had ever had in their entire career, and like I said, I'm a remotely piloted aircraft sensor operator by trade, and so Operation AFSE. And so some hadn't seen a female chief, they hadn't seen a female superintendent. And so were my orders brushed off because of my gender? I really say that because I was in a position, I haven't been in a place where someone could necessarily brush off an order. I was still the chief, or I was still their flight chief, or like I say, even coming up, I became a sensor operator as a staff sergeant. And so right away I was an NCO. And so there wasn't now I do believe maybe people could have brushed off some of the things that I said because maybe they thought, oh, she doesn't understand me, she's not like me, she doesn't look like me. I do believe that there were some of my airmen who maybe did not talk to me about some of their problems because they thought I would not understand as a woman or as a single mother, or when I got married, whatever the fill in the blank was. And what I found is I still had to I couldn't just sit there and be like, well, I'm a woman, hear me roar. That's not leadership. We don't teach that. And so I really had to be honest and say, okay, do I talk to all my airmen the same, regardless of gender? Do I have the same conversations? Do I offer the same opportunities to all my airmen? Basically, I had to build trust with my airmen regardless of my gender. And I would say I would have had to build trust no matter what anyway. So, so like I said, I've been in a male-dominated career fields. Normally, I'm the only woman at the table, and then if you get into race and all that other stuff, normally I'm the only one of me at the table as well. So I really couldn't use that as a reason, and no one else really could use it as a reason not to listen either. So I hope that helps with answering that one.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Chief Owens?
So I think I would say the same thing as the last two chiefs. I can't think of anything specific that anyone has blown off just specifically because I was a female. Other suspenses that I said, maybe a squadron scoop or, a flight chief absolute that weren't met. Yes, but I can't tie it specifically to them doing it because of my gender or because and it was different people, right? So it wasn't like the same people. There were times people just didn't meet suspenses, but I think just because I treated my people the same across the board, just like everyone else, I can't tie it to gender specific, but held them responsible and meeting the suspenses and all of that. But I don't think there's an order that I ever gave that was blown off just because I was a female. And I'm not in a male dominant career field. I'm in Intel, so it's a lot of actually more, I think tend to have more females than it does males. But I have been stationed in AFSOC where I've been the only female in the room at the table, and I always felt like I was heard in all of those meetings that I spoke up in. So.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Chief Castro?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback with everyone. I've never had that issue. I have been, when I was on joint staff, the only female in a group traveling to Australia and going on a ship with the Navy for, 2 weeks underway. And I was told this admiral probably wasn't going to listen to what I had to say just because when I was Air Force and I was enlisted, because that's how he treated the previous members. But I think going in and knowing your craft and having reliable information will make people understand and be more trustworthy to what you have to say. So that's the only one I can relate to that. But no, I've had one airman in my entire career to tell me they were not going to do something I told them to do, and that didn't go off very well. And later discovered that member actually had some drug abuse issues. So I don't think it was related to my gender, but it was just related to just what she was going through.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Our second question, do you feel women or their careers are determined by their character or personality more so than their performance? Chief Castro, we'll start with you.
So I think it's a matter of both, right? So I think our personalities kind of are driven by what career we're in. Medical, we seem to be a bit more kinder, friendlier, but then we still have to perform just as well as our counterparts. But I think everybody's different, and you're going to operate in different environments. And sometimes your personalities do have to adjust depending upon what action or duties you're performing. And so I've had kind of a colorful career. So I think doing protocol or being an exec, my personality might have changed. My values didn't change, but I think in those arenas, sometimes you have to sometimes be a little bit more aggressive. So yeah, I think it's a combination of both.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Owens?
I mean, I definitely think that character and personality play into your career, but I don't think that that it weighs heavier than performance. We've had this discussion when we go and look at when we do boarding for annual awards, when we do boarding for stratification. There are some females who struggle, and we've had that discussion also with the D&I discussion that's been going on lately about strong women in the military who are very vocal and being viewed more as, excuse my language, bitch, and then males being strong and being, looked at like, that's someone I want to follow. That's a strong male leader. So I do think there's a little bit of bias on how we characterize people, but I think that's up to us to change. We want to follow those strong women leaders. We want more of those women leaders who are willing to speak up, but I don't necessarily think that that's judged off their performance. There has been, I think personality conflicts with certain people who have very strong personalities, but it's knowing, when to speak up in the right way to speak up that can impact their performance. There's tact. So if you're able to speak up tactfully, I don't think that impacts performance or, their career. Then, it just depends how you speak up. But I don't think careers are determined by their character or personality more than the performance.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Pollard?
So I'm gonna roll this question back a little bit. Before I got here, I worked at basic military training as a squadron superintendent. And what I'll say about that is you know, we come in the Air Force, you took your ASVAB based on your scores and you received a job, or you went open general and won the lottery. So I came in open general, I won the lottery. So, and that's how you are picked for your job first and foremost in the Air Force. Even if you're trying to cross-train or retrain, you are picked cross-train or retrain based on vacancies, based on all the big things that the Air Force has put in place, right? So in that, there's not a thing that's like, okay, well, other than there are, you know, the career fields where women can't go. Okay, but everywhere else it is, did you meet the standard to get into that career field, right? So now you're in the career field, and now there's other jobs within the career field, which I think maybe that could be where this question is coming from. So like I said, I'm air crew, and there's different jobs in the squadron. And so what I would say is, no matter what, when I show up or when you show up, anyone shows up, you show up as yourself, and the person who's looking at you is going to either have a bias or stereotype or whatever. We're doing D&I, that we know that those things exist. So I would tell a short story. When I first came into remotely piloted aircraft, and I came to my first job, and I was working Royal Air Force, and one of the Royal Air Force, he said to me, he said, "I hope you're not just like the other one." And so, like I said, there weren't many women, and there weren't many African-American women. And so there was one other African-American woman. And so he had put all these stereotypes or his own experiences into, "I hope you're not like the other one." So did I get offended? No, I went ahead and went on with my job, but I never forgot it. So at the end of the day, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what my attitude was. It was, I was competent. I was confident in what I did. I ended up becoming an instructor. So at the end of the day, if a woman has got a job, if a man gets a job, if whoever fills in the blank gets that job, it's, especially in the Air Force, it's because that person is competent and they are ready to fill that job. I think us as leaders, we have the responsibility to make sure that that is indeed actually happening, and that someone's not picked. Another short story I've just recently had, even as a command chief, and I've had to ask one of my groups, someone came for an exit interview, a male, and his wife had a baby, and come to find out he had been on shift work for 5 years. Well, right now I don't work in a place where you should be on shift work for 5 years. And so I asked them this question. I said, let's be real. If he was a woman who had just had a baby, would she still be on shift work? Did we say no because he is male? And I say we because at this point we are all leaders, right? So was the answer no because he is male? I think these are real questions that we have to ask, and it's more than just, is it just a woman being picked for a job? It could be a male being picked for a job or not being picked for a job based on someone else's bias or stereotype. Because he ended up telling me that, oh, he was told, well, you didn't give birth to the child. Well, that didn't matter. His wife, we all talked about EF&P, his wife was having certain kinds of issues and he needed to be there, right? So we need to give the same allowances that we're giving for all of our airmen. And like I said, that's on us as leaders to make sure that we're doing that. So have I experienced it? Have I heard it? Sure, but it's what we do after the fact that proves who we actually are.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Chief Mitchell?
Well, I don't know that I can add a whole lot to what these leaders have already said, but I will say that, you know, hopefully everybody has some level of character, and that regardless of whether you're a male or female or you know, a different color or different race, like, character is kind of the foundation of who we are as airmen. And personality is something a little bit different, right? So we all have different personalities, and that's definitely not gender-based. That's not race-based. That's not ethnicity-based. That's not anything else. So again, this is just one of those things where you have to be aware enough of who you are, and that there are differences in everybody, and it doesn't mean because of what color you are or anything else that you're supposed to act a certain way or your personality is supposed to be a certain way. And again, just as leaders, that's what makes us great, is that we are all different. We have different personalities, even different performance levels. Like everybody starts, you know, in the military, in the Air Force, we make that big assumption that we all come in at the same, you know, starting line with the same information and the same character and the same values and everything else. But I mean, we are just different. We all start at different places, and we all end at different places, and we all get there at different amounts of time. And I think performance is just as good as you're going to put into it yourself, and what others are going to pour into you and give feedback and all of that stuff. So if we're judging somebody's performance just based off of a personality trait that we expect or gender stereotypes, then I think we're probably mistaken. So Sheryl Sandberg in her book, Lean In, I don't know if any of y'all have read that. It's been out for several years now, but she talks about that as well. So if you get a chance, just go, I think she's got a TED Talk, and or just go pull up the notes. But I think that that's one of those things that we have to be actively talking about and being aware of. And anytime that you've got biases like that, that hopefully your teammates are being good wingmen, and they'll hook you up so you can see that there's so much more to somebody than those things that we might judge off of.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Chief Castro, do you have time for one more question?
I do, yes.
All right. So we'll move on to the next one. Do you feel there is a bias towards women selected for specific jobs, i.e. coordinating the unit holiday party, commander secretaries, commander execs? Do you feel there is a bias that women have better soft skills than their male counterparts? So Chief Castro, we'll start with you.
So I think that once again goes back to someone's values and their personalities. I'm always for who can do the job the best, right? So if you have great administrative skills, then you could probably make a better exec than someone who does not. If you're good at planning events, whether you're male, female, whatever, whoever can get the job done, that's who I'm looking at. I think that sometimes people look at us in that aspect. I take myself, for example, so I've been an exec probably more times than I care to mention. I've done protocol, so it's like I was a party planner, you know, but that's because I enjoy doing those things, right? It wasn't because someone said, oh, you're female, I think you'll do good at this. It was because I go after things that I'm interested in, the things that I want to do and want to accomplish. So as a leader, I think we shouldn't look at whether it's a male or female. Do they have, are they more sympathetic? Sometimes you find men are more sympathetic than some women are. So I think it's just how we're built. Everyone's different. And I do know that there are some people who do look at that and think, you know, maybe a guy can plan the annual award ceremony. A female can plan better than a male. I don't think so. Whoever has the skills and who can do the job, I say they go for it.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Chief Owens?
So I've seen it. Do I think that either men or women have better skills? No, I think it's person to person, but I have seen leaders who have been hiring for jobs who have said either, you know, I only want a female because I think they're better at the job, or I don't want a female because I don't want the perception of there potentially being an unprofessional relationship. So I've seen comments go both ways when it comes to that. But there is biases, right? But I will say that honestly, the best exec that I've ever worked with was a male. So it's person to person, skills to skills, and it should be the best man up, and that should be the case. And I've talked to leaders about the comments they've made and saying either I only want or I don't want. But there are those biases out there, and I think as all of us being leaders, it's our job to speak up when we hear those and prevent them from happening, and making sure that it's the best man up, you know, getting that job.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Pollard?
All right. So, do I think there's bias toward women? This is one of those questions where I wanted to just take woman out and just, you know, fill in the blank. We whatever we want to fill in. You know, are we gonna say that it's if you're a gay man, you're better for planning parties? If you're a woman, you're better at, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Those one, the biases don't belong there. Two, it's already been said, it's up to us as leaders to make sure that they're not there. Have I seen it? So I've been asked, I was a tech sergeant, and I was asked, would you be the baby shower planner for the unit? And I said, no, I don't want to be the baby shower planner for the unit. If it was assumed that because I was one of the only women in the unit that I would want to plan baby showers, the answer is no. And so that becomes one of those things where one, we need to tell airmen that it's okay to say no. And then two, don't ask people just because they are a certain gender that they should be doing X, Y, Z. I recently hired my exec, and I had 2 males and 1 female go for the job, interview for the job, and a male was hired. He was the best one for the job. And so, and I do know that some bases have gone to, not a lottery, but kind of gone to everyone who wants to be in charge of the holiday party, every group, every squadron, they have to put in names, and then they go through, some of them do an interview panel, some of them do a few other things. So is there a bias of women with soft skills? You know what, there's gonna be different people who have biases different ways. We have to make sure that we as leaders are getting in the way of biases stopping people from getting the jobs that they need to get. You should be getting a job because you're the best at that job.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Mitchell?
So I think you can see that in our recruiting a little bit, right? So if you look at like different genders across all of the career fields, I mean, you see career fields that are they have more females in there, and then you do in other career fields that have more males. But again, that just goes back to maybe we have some of that systemic built into our processes and how we are moving like towards the sessions, and how we're, you know, talked a little bit earlier just about like jobs and what we get bent into, I guess, in the military. But even further, when you talked about like execs and the party planners and stuff, I think we make a lot of assumptions, and I get, you just have to be aware and be looking for that. So every time you should always be asking yourself, am I asking them just because they're gay, or am I asking them because they're female, or am I asking them because just pick whatever? And we have to be aware of that. And sometimes you just get, you know, that rote memory jumps in, and you just gonna go with the flow because you've got so many things going on. But again, that's just where that that constant awareness of what's going on in your area, and then not being scared to talk about it too, especially with your leaders and stuff. So I had a conversation with our wing commander, and when we were looking at hiring for his exec position, and there were 2 of the 3 people that were nominated for his commander's exec were female. And so we had a conversation about, hey, this is about the performance. This is about what they bring to the team. This is about how they fill in our blind spots, and because we don't have time to not have everybody in the fight. So you just have to have those conversations and be open about it and be willing to talk about it, and then make good decisions based off of what the job is and what those the individual strengths are and how they're going to fill in those blind spots.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Our next question is, in the past or from your experience, have you felt or witnessed women being perceived as making decisions based on feelings or emotions? What are your thoughts on the matter? We'll start with Chief Owens.
So I would say I've heard comments, right? Like I've heard she's too emotional, or she's super emotional about this topic, where sometimes their male counterparts will be referred to as being passionate about a topic. So I just think we need to be aware of the verbiage we use, because there's lots of topics like EFMP and women in the military, and that I'm very, very passionate about, and I can speak about forever. I don't think I'm emotional about it, but I think I'm very passionate about it. And I think we just need to be aware of what words we're using when it comes to topics, and when we're referencing whatever, you know, male, female, gender, you know, race, it doesn't matter. I just think we need to be aware of that. But I have seen it, and I've heard those topics, those comments used. But like I said, I just think we need to be aware of that and ensure that we're using the same words across the board, passionate versus emotional, about members when they're talking about certain topics. And if they're emotional about something, I would say that they're probably passionate about it, and that's probably why they're emotional.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Pollard.
So in the past, have I experienced? So yes, same. You know, the same as Chief Owens just said. I've heard people say that, and really what I would say is, one, there's nothing wrong with emotions, and that as long as your emotions come with some critical thinking, and I would say a mirror. I would say, so talking to us as leaders, we should be a mirror to our peers and be able to tell our peers, hey, you know, maybe emotion's not the right word. You're emotional or you're passionate. Tell me why you're emotional or passionate, or tell me what it is that's making you think that way so that you can get to the root of whatever it is that they're feeling emotional or passionate about. I've heard it said about men and women. But yes, I've heard, you know, oh, she's angry, you know, versus he's passionate and things like that. I've heard it, and I would say, like I said, it's our job as leaders and as peers to kind of, hey, let's have that conversation and get to the root so we can do some critical thinking.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Mitchell?
So I agree. I don't think that's just a female thing, right? For being emotional, because I've had just as many guys come in and be extremely emotional, especially in their decision making, as they don't stop and take just a minute to think through, you know, what they're doing. They strictly go off of that, and that's just, I think that's just part. Again, just kind of being aware of who you are and how you make decisions, and being able to stop and just take a minute and then have somebody with you, right? Every time that I've had somebody in my office that's talking through something, and they, you know, they get angry, or they get loud, or they cry, or they're upset. And so you talk through those things in a slow, kind of rational manner, and then you get to the root of what their issue is, or you help them make that decision or get to the problem they're trying to solve. But it does go back to, like, you have to be able to have that self-control. And if you are making emotional decisions, it doesn't matter who you are, you might miss some things, and you might make a poor decision, and that affects airmen. And anytime we're affecting airmen because we are making decisions based off of emotions versus that critical thought and being critical thought leaders, then we're going to put our airmen at risk. And so again, just as y'all are going through your leadership journey and your journey in your Air Force time, that is something you always have to be aware of, that those decisions that you make every single day, they affect airmen and their families. And anytime that you're affecting airmen and their families, especially in a negative way, they probably don't have their head in the game when they're trying to do their mission. And so you are directly impacting that. So helping people through that process and understanding how to kind of slow it down and push the pause button a little bit, and set yourself up for that process, you're probably going to end up with a lot better airmen, and your mission is going to be accomplished at the end of the day. So.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Our next question is, do you feel that having feelings or emotions are bad leadership qualities? If so, why? If not, why? Chief Owens, we'll begin with you.
I mean, I absolutely don't think that emotions are a bad leadership quality. I mean, that's how we relate to others. We hear all the time, tell your story. I feel like there's definitely a lot of airmen that I have helped over the years that I actually didn't know at the time by just telling my story and things that I've been through. And that's how we relate to our airmen. I think our airmen need to know that we're human and we've been through things. And whether it be, you know, you always hear the chiefs who have had Article 15s and made it to chief, or chiefs who have had a loss of a child, or experienced sexual assault, whatever the topic is, by sharing that story and making your airmen feel like, you know, you're relatable, in that, you know, you're not on this pedestal as just, you know, a chief and haven't experienced anything. Telling your story is how we relate to them. So showing emotions and even getting emotional about certain topics, I just think helps our airmen relate to us and us to them.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Pollard?
Okay, so I'm a yes and no. So feelings and emotions, bad leadership quality. The only time it is a yes on that is if the feelings and emotions are ruling the person, and they're ruling their actions and ruling everything they do. And they're not able to use, kind of like I said earlier, they're not able to use their critical thinking. It is a no if, and I've seen some great leaders do this, they use their emotions, they use their feelings to point them in a direction, and then use that and get more information on that, whatever that thing is that they're going after. And it ends up being passion, or like, oh, they're really into that, or they're the subject matter expert of that one thing. And trust me, they have feelings and emotions about that one thing they're the subject matter expert of. And so, so like I said, I think it's a yes and a no. And really quick, the last question, I meant to give you all something, because I like to, you know, give some resources. So there's a Harvard, I'm looking at it. So there's a study on Heidi versus Howard. And what they did was they gave students, that MBA students in a program, they gave them resumes. It's the exact same resume, they just changed the name on the resume. The students described the female version as overly aggressive, and they described the male version as competent. And they said they wouldn't work for her, but they work for him. Like I said, these are the exact same resumes. So if you all want to, and it's part of bias, it's also part of the book Blind Spot, which is on our diversity and inclusion list right now. And so if you're interested in knowing more about that, that's on the overcomingbias.com, the leader, gender, and there's also dealing with blind spot. There is a gender, career, family test that you all can take that goes into if you're having to deal with, or if you're seeing or perceiving gender-based biases in the workplace and as leaders.
Thank you, ma'am. Chief Mitchell?
So I don't know that we would enjoy work very much if we work for people with no feelings or emotions or ability to interact and engage with people. I think that's part of that human connection. So again, agree with other chiefs as well. Like, you have to be able to engage with somebody. And if I'm talking to a brick wall or somebody that just has like no sense of emotions, no sense of what you might be going through, then it's going to be really hard for them to empathize with you and your situation. And we can't just put everybody at the same, again, we're all different, right? And everybody's got different situations, and everybody's got different reactions to those situations. And if you can't, as a leader, kind of just alter a little bit the way you are with each individual in that situation and how they're reacting to it, and empathize with them, then you're probably going to miss the mark a little bit. So I do think that it could be a good quality and it could be a bad quality. It's definitely not gender neutral. That can affect both, whether you're male or female. I know when we used to teach 4 lenses in the NCO Academy curriculum, like you had your blue, and then your green, and your yellow, or your gold and orange, and there are certain colors that were associated with, well, everything is so matter of fact and data driven, and not a lot of the emotion. So I used to have one of our instructors, he's like, my wife knows I love her, but I don't tell her, and I don't feel the need to do that during the day, because he's like, I don't have that connection like I do. But he would do things that would remind him that other people do have feelings. And so he would have just put little notes like, hey, don't forget this, or he would put a little note on his calendar just to help him be a better leader and to better match with some of the people that he worked with. And that really made a better working environment. So it can be good and it can be bad. And just like anything, right, for leadership quality. So as long as you are using it appropriately and effectively, then again, it'll be a win for your airmen.
Thank you for that, ma'am. At this time, we're going to move on to the students' questions. So the first question is going to be from Tech Sergeant Burkett.
Good morning, Chiefs. My name is Tech Sergeant Burkett. I'm from Flight 14, 607th Air Control Squadron at Luke Air Force Base. I am currently in a very heavily male-dominated career field. I have not actually interacted with a female in my career field for over 5 years. And I am just curious, what is the large Air Force trying to do for career fields like mine to get more females into them from the start and retain them through the ranks?
Chiefs, does any of you have, go ahead and step in.
So I'll go. So what do you think the Air Force should be doing on that? We'll do a little reverse question. Is that something because they're not asking for that job? So like Chief Pollard talked about, she came in open general. So maybe is that a bias that we have at our MEP stations when we're putting people in?
Personally, I think a lot of this goes back to kind of the concept of women in STEM. because my career field has a very high electronics as well as a second requirement in mechanical, where actually we have a dual requirement to be 1 Charlie 8s. And with that, I'm not sure how many women feel comfortable going for those kinds of career fields. I know culturally there's always been kind of a bias against women working in technology positions, at least when I was a much younger airman and in high school and stuff. So I don't know if that's still bleeding through. So I don't know if the Air Force is trying to encourage women to come in for those jobs or not.
So I think we all want to answer now. You go ahead. I have an ambulance behind me. Go ahead.
So I'm Intel, but I'm also in a cyber group. So we have a ton of cyber. I mean, they're not the 1 Charlies, but I absolutely know that the recruiters are out there looking for women who are interested in STEM, who want to do cyber, who want to do these type of career fields. And they're absolutely looking to bring in more women into those jobs. Again, it's the same thing in engineering, where they're trying to hire outside the Air Force into those career fields. It's the same issue. They're looking for women who want to do those jobs. And if we can find women who want to do that, but it starts young, right? We need to start getting our middle schoolers, our high schools interested in STEM early on, so that they feel like they belong in that career field, they belong in that job. So I think it's a bigger issue that we need to get after, but I think we're working on it. The schools are starting STEM programs, and I think you'll see more and more women joining those career fields as we go on. But the recruiters are definitely focusing on bringing in more diversity into those career fields.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say is, being at NASIC, National Air and Space Intel Center, we have scientists, we have engineers, we have intel, and there are women. There are women there, and so one of our head engineers is a woman, and she's, you know, she tells her stories of going through and going through life and being one of the only female engineers at the table and all of that kind of good stuff. Now, for the Air Force, I think that there's a few different pieces of competition here. So for the Air Force to compete for someone with electronic and mechanical, it'd be the same competition for male and female, but there are just less females, right? So that competition becomes, okay, well, if someone can get an actual engineering job, especially at NASIC or any of these other organizations, engineering or scientific or one of these other jobs, and that's paying more, right? So then the Air Force has to look at, okay, well, what else can we do to make the Air Force the thing that these airmen would want to do with these skills that everyone wants right now? Everyone wants cyber, everyone wants everyone wants these kinds of skills right now. So it has to be something that looks great to these people. The other thing is, it was already said, as far as recruiting from high schools and doing things earlier, that I think is actually a cultural shift that the United States is going to have, that, you know, it starts in school. Home ec and what is the other one? Because my son is in the other one. Well, it shouldn't just be all the girls are in home ec. I don't even know if they do home ec anymore. All the girls are in home ec, and all the boys are doing the wood shop. They're in the wood shop. No, it should be any kids who want to do any of that stuff should be able to do that. It starts earlier than even when we're recruiting them in the Air Force. So that cultural shift, I think the cultural shift has already happened. We have female gamers. We have, you know, as the United States does that, because we are recruiting from what the United States has, right? As well as some people that come from overseas. So we're recruiting from within our own depths as far as that goes. So is it happening? Yes. Is it happening fast enough? Well, probably not as we would like. Then the other thing is, so I was a AFS manager. So as an AFS manager, we would look at the ASVAB. And so your CFM is probably looking at the ASVAB and saying, should it be an and or should it be an or? And that's something that they would have to work on to change on if it should be an and or an or, because maybe an or means that you can recruit more airmen into the AFSC. But maybe the and is needed because of all the things that you're learning. Unsure. These are things that I don't know. So that becomes the thing of, well, what are the things that the Air Force can do? Can they make it an and instead of can they make it an or instead of an and? And I don't know your CFM, but I'm pretty sure they're looking at that.
Thank you, Chiefs. Our next question is going to be from Tech Sergeant Geertz.
Good morning, Chiefs. Like was said, I'm Sergeant Geertz, 317th Recruiting Squadron, Fredericksburg, Virginia, Flight 21. As a recruiter, I've received questions from female applicants about what a military lifestyle is like for a female in a male-dominated in male-dominated environments. And as a male, since I can't drive or derive from firsthand experience, I've had some difficulty answering these questions. I was wondering if you were to receive some of these questions, how might you respond?
So I'll just give them the day in the life, really. I mean, male-dominated career field. I deployed and I used a female porta potty. I mean, some of it is like there's a female porta potty. There was a female shower. We had a female tent. And then when it was time to get back together, we got back together as a team. Let's see. In today's Air Force, there's never been a place where it's like, you go use the restroom out in the yard because we only have male facilities. We don't have that now. We could talk about the fact that there's not enough toilets in the female restroom sometimes. But that I never felt like that was that's a thing. They need when they're engineering these buildings, they need to add more toilets. Okay, anyway, so as far as a day in the life, female uniform, I come to work. Let's see here. I have kids, but so do the male airmen. They have kids too. My son's EF&P, so do the male airmen. They're EF&P. Let's see. I work shift work, so did the male airmen. They're working shift work. So for me, I don't know what it's like to be a man. So I won't even lie. I can't tell you what it's like to be a male airman in the Air Force. But I can tell you, as a female airman, I was a female airman in the Air Force. It was what it was. Came to work, did my job, and I had to put my hair up. I cut it off one time, but you do have to put your hair away. So I would keep it as regular, I guess, as you could. You're a female and you're in the Air Force and you're in the military and you're doing what you have to do for your country. And yeah, I keep it as simple as that.
I'm not really sure I can add much more to that, but same thing, female, male, we all signed the dotted line to basically do the same thing, right? Do a job in the military. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we may have to go to war. We may have to, go beside our brothers and sisters and fight a war. That's part of the military. I agree with not enough toilets in the women's bathrooms, and there's always a line. But, I think it's what you make of it. And have there been times in my careers where I've gotten inappropriate comments from males? Absolutely. But again, it's what you do with it. I'm sure there's probably males who've gotten inappropriate comments from females. Actually, I know there are, because I've seen EO complaints at my level from males that have been female, driven. So, you see it on both sides. It's what do you do with it? Do you stop them? Do you correct them? Do you tell them it's wrong? And do you follow through if they don't stop? It's the same thing on both sides. We all have rules and regulations that we have to follow. And then it's our job, to hold the airmen that aren't meeting those regulations that, and crossing that line accountable. But I've loved my time in the Air Force, and I wouldn't go back and change it. And I said, yeah, you can't give them that answer, but it's the same thing I think on both sides when it comes at the end of the day. We're there to do a job and meet a mission. And there are some career fields that are more male dominant, but it's, it's talking to them about, yeah, I can't answer your question about what it's like to be a female, but I can tell you what it's like to be a male, and we have a lot of the similar experiences.
And I would add, so let me add, because I know sometimes there are challenges. So I don't want to make it seem like there are no challenges. So maybe some of the challenges are, so after you get done with maternity leave, you are going to have to do the work that you have to do to get your body back in shape and get back in Air Force form and pass your PT test and all that kind of stuff. For me, that wasn't easy. For some people, they just bounce right back. I didn't bounce right back. In fact, I'm still working off this baby fat. My child is 13 years old. So it's still a work in progress. So, there's those kinds of things, as well as if you're a female airman, or whoever, if they want to breastfeed and they need a lactation area, the Air Force has actually come a long way. Now there's AFI, there's regulations that cover that kind of stuff and say these are the minimum things that a squadron or unit has to have in order to cover those kinds of things. So I would say that for anything that is specifically female related, the Air Force, in my opinion, has done a good job of purposely covering that. The Air Force has said, hey, we're going to have lactation rooms, or hey, you have this amount of time. Now you need to get your body back you know, and now they've even said that if you miscarry, if you lose your child, if you, all these different things, now there's different timelines of when you can come back as far as being medically cleared and things like that. So I would say that the things that are specifically female to Air Force, in my opinion, has done a good job over the time that I've been in of accounting for that and saying, you know, everyone is included. Everyone can get the job done. Everyone can serve.
I just wanted to add like one more thing to that. There are those perceptions out there sometimes with females and getting pregnant and being in the military. And sometimes you go from working 12 hour shifts, because I was a shift worker as intel, going down to 8 hours at certain points in your pregnancies, and then sometimes half days before like that last trimester. And so there can be those perceptions that, I don't know, you're lazy or you're taking the time off or whatever. But I would say the best way around this, and advice you can give to females, is that if you kill it all the time, whether you're working 12 hours, 8 hours, 4 hours, if you come to work and you're killing it when you're there, I don't think anyone's going to have anything to say to you about, you're being lazy or you're pregnant, you're taking advantage of it. Just kill it while you're there. And I think that's all they can ask of you. And that's what I've seen be the best counter to that. I've never seen a female who has killed it, whether they worked 4 hours, 8 hours, or 12 hours, that got talked badly about. And, you know, then it's us as leaders to hold the airmen accountable who we feel are taking advantage of the system, whether it be male or female. We have males who take advantage of the system, and we have females who take advantage of the system. And it's, you know, again, our job to make sure that we're holding them accountable.
So I'll add, I would find somebody that you can have them talk to, especially if you know somebody that's in, a female is already in the military and they can be a mentor or something or answer those questions. But, you know, I'd be transparent. I'll be transparent right now. I think we have made some improvements, but we shouldn't just now be putting out the lactation room policy and that it's not in a restroom. And we shouldn't just now be worried about how women wear their hair so tight in a bun that they get migraine headaches, they go bald, and they have issues with their scalp because of the hair standards. So it's either you cut it off short or you suffer those kind of things. And we still deal with sexual assault and sexual harassment. And if we're not having those conversations, like, hey, it's there, but here's what we're trying to get after, and here's what we're doing about it, and here as an NCO in the Air Force, here's what I try to do about it. But I definitely, from expectation management standpoint, I mean, these things are hitting the news. And if you say it's all rainbows and unicorns, and then they get to their first maintenance unit, one of my best friends is a maintainer, and they're going to have a shock, I think. And then they're going to be like, man, my recruiter, what a jerk, because he didn't tell me any of this stuff. So you have to be transparent, but at the same time, I mean, that's where we're charging each and every one of you, and ourselves included, to continue to make the Air Force a better place and the Space Force a better place, and that you should really be an ally, right? You should be a sponsor. I'll give you an example. When I was at Malmstrom as a command chief there, so I'd frequently go out to the field with our defenders and our maintainers, and they would go out 4 or 5 days at a time. When we were out there, there were no porta potties. So where are you going to use the bathroom? Well, for guys, that's probably a little bit, that's easy. But when you're a female defender and you're all, you have your gear on, try to get your BDU and your ABU pants down to go use and pop a squat over. Now, I'm from Kentucky and grew up on a farm, so I'm good with popping a squat somewhere. But especially if you look at some of our missile sites, they are covered down with video cameras and everything else. So you have to strategically find a place behind a Humvee so you can pop a squat and make sure that there aren't, So, and while we were there, we were able to get porta potties. So at least both males and females had a place to go. But I tell you what, the females did not want the porta potties, because that made it look like we were asking for some kind of accessions because we were a girl. And that's the last thing that we want. We don't want to be treated special because we're a girl, but man, it sure is nice that, some of our brothers in arms are thinking about it ahead of us, and they're the ones that are saying, hey, maybe it's not a big deal, but I see, my buddy over here, and she has to go find a hiding spot behind the Humvee to go use the bathroom when she's got all of her stuff on, and it's probably pretty hard. So I would just ask for everybody to think about that kind of stuff, and You know, if you are a male and you're seeing some things, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. You know, sometimes it's nice for you to be vocal about that as well, because you'll never have well, you may, but a lot of times the female airmen aren't going to speak up because we don't want to be that person that's asking for special requirements or anything else because we're a girl.
Thank you, Chiefs.
Our next question is going to be from Tech Sergeant Perkinson.
Good morning, Chiefs. I'm Sergeant Aaron Perkson from Flight 3, Moody Air Force Base, 23rd MXS. My question was specifically for Chief Pollard. I'm currently putting in a OTS package with RPA pilot being my top pick. And I was wondering if you could speak on the validity of all the hearsay I've heard from previous people in the career field regarding the negative organizational climate and mental health aspects of the community. And if it is true currently, nowadays, is there anything the Air Force is doing besides opening up more duty stations?
All right. So, so like I left Creech Air Force Base 2 assignments ago. When I left Creech Air Force Base, we had something called human performance teams, and these human performance teams were mental health. It was a physiologist, a chaplain, and they had security clearances and were able to be embedded in the units. I know that there are other organizations, AFSOC has something like that as well, and then the intel community has something called True North. And so the RPA community has done the same thing. So I'm really, especially when it comes to mental health it's a big deal everywhere. It's definitely a big deal in the RPA community, and they're not ignoring it. They're not ignoring the fact that someone could be looking at something for months and then blow it up, and what kind of impact that has on the brain. And so, yes, that is big. Now, organizational climate, I'm going to be real. That totally depends on the organization, right? It depends on the leadership that is there. And so it depends on how much say that person may or may not have in the organization they were going to or the organization they were in, right? And so not every squadron was the same. I feel pretty proud about the squadron I was in, 42nd Attack Squadron, Attack. And so one of the first NQ9 squadrons, and we instilled that. It was part of our squadron pride and our squadron heritage, and we made sure that everyone who came there knew that. Now, the other bases were not necessarily for morale. The other bases were, to make sure that we're everywhere. We're not just in one place, because at first it was kind of like Battleship Creech, which is also not a good place to be if you're thinking about the defense of the nation, to have everything in one place. And it was pretty well known where that place was, right? So that's not exactly the best thing. So it is good to put our stuff in different places. It keeps our things protected, right? When it comes to national defense. And so, like I said, there are mental health, there are, the last time I checked, some of them were trying to get mental health in the units. Now the issue is manning. Does mental health have enough manning to put someone in every unit, not just the RPA units? Because RPA is not the only mission area that's like, we need mental health. I would tell you, for NASIC, being inside, being intel engineer, they want mental health in the building as well, and everyone's sharing mental health. So right now, everyone wants mental health, right? And so I would say the other thing is the education piece, making sure that people have opportunities for education. In years past, RPA pilots and operators felt like they didn't have opportunities to go get an education. They now have those kinds of opportunities. They can go to schools, they can go, leadership classes are coming to them. They're big on building culture and community within the RPA community. So, I'm not going to say that if you go, you're not going to end up at a unit with a toxic culture. That's the part I can't control, because none of us can say that even now. I can't say that when you go back to your squadron, you're not going to have a bad supervisor, a bad superintendent, or anything. That part still remains the same, right? That part will depend on whoever is actually the leadership team right there. And of course, you and how you're going to be able to impact that leadership team to make it better for everybody. I hope that helps.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your time, Chief.
Okay, our next question will be from Tech Sergeant Johnson.
Good morning, Chiefs. Can you hear me okay? All right. I'm Technical Sergeant Johnson from Detachment 1, 800 or 823rd Red Horse Squadron at Tyndall Air Force Base and NCO Flight 1. So I am one of less than 50 women in the explosive ordnance disposal career field. I have endured multiple derogatory comments from all enlisted ranks throughout my career. I've experienced a Chief Master Sergeant who tried to redirect my assignment away from his flight because he didn't want to deal with females. And I've been passed over for deployments and missions because of being a female. I am now potentially facing being forced out of the EOD career field because I won't be able to pass a new PT test that is relevant to one mission set that I will never be selected for anyway. Females who utilize EO automatically lose trust and are outcasted from the community because many men are scared for their own careers, and sometimes rightfully so. So my list could go on forever, but my question is, what advice do you have that I can pass along to the women in my career field who are dealing with the same difficulties?
So I would say use your voice. And sometimes that's hard. And sometimes we end up using our voice and feeling like we get punished for it. But, you know, seek out that support from, again, your male counterparts, and have some allies as well, because it's not just one person that makes the difference. I mean, sometimes you have to have multiple people that are teaming together to be able to pass that information back up. And sometimes if, you know, you mentioned the PT test and something that you won't ever be selected for. So I'm not too familiar with the EOD career field and where and how you separate the, maybe shred some of your stuff out, but that's definitely something you might want to pass up to your EOD career field manager. Because again, when we're looking at all different policies that we create from the headquarters perspective and how we affect our diversity and inclusion, if we are creating policies and we are creating things that intentionally or unintentionally have an effect on what our diverse populations and on the inclusiveness of our career fields, then there's probably an issue there that needs to be looked at a little bit better. So I know career field managers are always looking from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. They get briefed on that quarterly from here at the headquarters, and especially anytime they're doing like their developmental teams and stuff like that. But again, and we'll never know these things unless you say something. And I'll give you an example. So just the last 2 days I spent with a bunch of my teammates at the AFSELF, which is Air Force Senior Enlisted Leader Council. So all the MAGCOM command chiefs and Chief Bass, and then a bunch of the different advisors. And so we were talking about different diversity and inclusion, like the 362903 updates that are coming out, right? And so one of the things was hair standards. Well, Chief Bass has always had her hair kind of cut short, so she hasn't had any issues. But she said, you know, we've got people that have the headaches and stuff like that, and it wasn't because of, you know, anybody else in the room, but it was Chief Master Sergeant Smith, Melvina Smith from Global Strike Command, that said, hey, I am that person. I have to get 43 different shots because I have migraine headaches because of wearing my hair in a bun every day. And I was like, wow, some things you don't know. So I would say use your voice and make sure that you are elevating those kind of things up and at least having those conversations. And maybe we can move forward a little bit with that, especially in the career field like yours.
And I can't speak to like EOD specifically, but I do think a little bit of the, you know, walking EO complaint or, you know, stigma of going to EO is a little bit of a thing of the past. I know that's a rumor that you hear kind of coming in and people talk about, but I've had multiple Master Sergeants that I know who have gone to EO with complaints, and their unit, where their leadership, the commanders, the shirts, like, were 100% supportive of them going forward and had their back on EO type issues. So I do think it's a culture change. And I do know, I have friends who have been EOD, so I do know EOD is a hard career field. But same, like I would just say, if you feel like you're facing things that are specifically, you know, against your gender, that to be that change for the future career field, right? The only way, like Chief Mitchell said, the only way we make changes is by being that voice and coming forward. And I will tell you 100%, it's not always easy being that voice. It's not always easy being the one that comes forward and speaks up about issues that are going on, and bringing that to the light. But if you don't bring it to the light, then it will continue. So that, I guess that's the best advice I could give you, is if you feel like it's specifically unrealistic for your gender, if they're going to allow women in EOD, then there has to be some kind of modification. Again, we want to be treated equal. We want to be able to, be there with our male counterparts, but I will never have the same amount of upper body strength as a lot of my male counterparts, and I may not run as fast as them, but I'm sure try to keep up, right? Like, but physically my body isn't going to be able to do the same things, and the same things for men. There are some things that we as women can do that men will never be able to do. And so I would just say, use your voice and speak up and address it. And anytime that you get these surveys that ask, come forward with ideas and issues that are going on, please, make sure you do that.
And so what I would add is, everyone said use your voice. So I'd offer a place where I know that it's safe for you to use your voice, and that is the Women's Initiative team. It's actually on Facebook, and they actually meet. They meet now on Zoom. But the Women's Initiative team on Facebook, it is a safe place for you to say, hey, this is the problem I'm having, and for that team, and you would end up joining that team, for them to get together and figure out, well, then what are some things we can do about this issue. So like I said, Women's Initiative team on Facebook. I have to find the exact name because I don't know if it says Air Force Women's Initiative team, but I think it just says Women's Initiative team. It's also called the WIT.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chiefs. Next question is going to be from Tech Sergeant Westcoat.
Hey, good morning, Chiefs. Tech Sergeant Westcoat here, 34th Intelligence Squadron, Fort Meade, NCOA, Flight 8. So my question this morning is an either or. Want to know, in your careers, what was a time when you could have used an advocate and did or didn't get one? Or can you tell me some obstacles, any obstacles you faced in your career as women leaders?
I guess I'll take this one first. So one of the obstacles I faced as a woman, I was in the Pentagon, and I was a single mom at the time, and I was looking for assignments, and I was talking to my leader, and he told me that I was actually trying to go to Cannon because the mission was awesome, even though it's at Cannon. And so that's where I wanted to go. And he told me, he said, I don't think you should do that. It's not a good idea. You're a single mom. The mission's going to be too much for you, that kind of thing. And I still put in for it. I actually got it, but EFMP is the reason I didn't go. And I've actually seen or heard that conversation multiple times, because I've even heard people try to sway people away from first sergeant duty if they're single moms, that kind of thing. So that would be one time. And like I said, I still went for it. I still believe in going for it. And then we do what we have to do to make sure that we can do both mission and family.
I would say, I think mine is probably along the same lines. Is when I first made chief, I was told that I would never go past the squadron level because I was a single parent. They're like, you're not going to be able to balance at a group or as a command chief, as a lot of the other roles. They're like, you'll probably do, your 3 years and get out, which is not the case. Obviously, I'm at a group now. And so I don't know if I need advocacy, but I just think we need to change the mindset on that. And I've had a lot of females who have talked about getting out of the military because they are single parents, and I will 100% tell them that, it's possible. And the biggest thing with where you decide to go or how you take your career is just having a support system. I mean, the Air Force isn't going to provide you with a support system to take care of your kids if you're a single parent, but kind of knowing what assignments you can apply for and where you can go and how do you manage that? Do you have, are you going to hire a nanny, or do you have a family member that can come help out or fly there when you need to go TDYs? And that's kind of what I've done over the years. But I think that's the biggest challenge is changing like where single parents can go. And I say this not just for females, for males too. We have a lot of male single parents in the Air Force who take full responsibility of their kids. And so, just making sure that, we're taking care of those airmen and not stopping them as single parents to take a career path that they want to take.
So I'll say from an advocacy perspective, like I was very lucky from a very young age. So y'all heard my story about my first duty assignment and being trained and competent enough, and then not being questioned whenever I had to make a critical decision when I was working crew one day. But that same superintendent that put that trust and confidence in me was a huge advocate, and always fought for you know, me to have opportunities and put me out in front of leaders and give me more training so I could be better, put me in positions that we, you know, we weren't as enlisted corps and typically able to do in that particular location. So I definitely think like advocacy and somebody who is a sponsor for you. And if you're in a position to sponsor somebody or mentor somebody or advocate for somebody, you know, take a look at who you are doing that for. And if it's always somebody who looks like you and acts like you and talks like you, then maybe you need to expand your, you know, your aperture just a little bit to include that. And I think that'll be a little bit better for everybody and you too. And you'll probably come out better for that too. So I will say for another perspective, so I'm not mill to mill, but been married to my husband and we're high school sweethearts. And so he's never served in the military. So he's always followed me around. And from a spouse perspective, he was always a good advocate for me being female in the military, but also for military spouses and in particular male spouses, because the females in the military, it's for whatever reason, like we just can't get past some of these gender roles. And so he was a stay-at-home dad for the last 3 years. He didn't, well, not the last 3 years, but 3 of the last 4 years. And so he didn't get a job here until probably 8 months after we got here. And I will tell you that for our success as a military family, like it was critical that he was supportive. And so he was always very outspoken about the male military spouse, and then also about gender roles in general, because if you want to talk about traditional gender roles, yeah, we've completely reversed it. Like, I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't get the kids ready for bed, I don't get their homework done. He does all that because I'm not at home. And, you know, so we have to be, again, just thoughtful about who we are around and making sure that we are all being an advocate for every type of person that we're going to be working with and every type of situation. Because you've got single parents, you've got mill to mill, you've got all sorts of, stay-at-home dads, you've got stay-at-home moms, and you've got lots of things to consider when you're working through kind of some of the leadership issues that you might come in contact with, or leadership opportunities too.
Awesome. Thank you, Chiefs.
Okay, our next question will be from Tech Sergeant Gallagher.
Good afternoon, Chiefs. Tech Sergeant Gallagher from 633rd Air Base Wing Public Affairs out of Joint Base Langley, Eustis in Virginia, and NCOA Flight 4. What advice do you have for females who believe they've been on the receiving end of gender bias, but can't necessarily prove it, such as with an EO complaint? It's kind of in a roundabout way, such as with mentorship given or opportunities and award selections, where female and some male leaders believe that the female and male applicants are equally deserving, but some of those male leaders tend to only select male applicants. And then the second part of that is, how can a female leader such as myself advocate for my female airmen without being perceived as, oh, well, you're only advocating for them because they're another female?
So I think we're in a really good time right now with the whole diversity and inclusion discussions, where I think the best route, if it doesn't meet like the EO guidelines, right, or cross that line into EO, is, just sitting down with that team, with your leadership team, whether it be your flight commander, flight chief, the shirt, and get a team together and be like, let's talk about this, and kind of look at stats, like how many times have we recognized females. Let's compare these records and, have multiple people like grade them and say, hey, like, which one's stronger? And have these open discussions saying, hey, are we doing everything that in our power to make sure that we're being fair across the board? Maybe we as a flight take names off awards when we submit them up and just say, my submission 1, my submission 2, until we can get around maybe those gender bias, if you feel like that's going on. I would say probably for that, that's probably the best route, but we're definitely aware of it right now, know that some of those biases are happening in certain locations. And then I would say, advocating for your female airmen, I would say advocate whoever you think is the best man up, right? for me, I don't care if people think that I'm being biased, because I know myself I'm not biased. So I'm going to advocate for whoever my best man up, whoever my strongest airman is, and I'm gonna support it 100%. So and I can show them the proof, right? I'll show you the records of my 5 troops. This is the strongest. And just stand by your decision. That I'm never going to be biased. I will fight for who my strongest airman is, and it is what it is. I'm not a biased person. I guess that's the best advice I have.
So I would say check yourself first too, though, right? So sometimes we suffer from confirmation bias. So we're only going to ask people who support our own positions and our own thoughts, right? So if you're getting feedback on an award, you're probably going to go to somebody that you trust and somebody that you already have a relationship with and be like, hey man, I didn't get this award. So what do you think this means? Because they only select the males and stuff. But you don't know what's on those packages, right? So just do a quick check, bring your package to whoever that senior leader is that is part of that perception that they're only selecting males, and have the conversation just like Chief Owen said, and just go from a perspective, hey, I'm trying to learn, just from, the view is different depending on where you sit, right? So you might not be aware of all the different things that are going on, and depending on which level on the unit you are, you just don't see some things. So you'll never know, and all you're going to do is sit and stew and think that and perpetuate that, man, they're only picking males, and so you'll clue in on that all the time. So I would say, get with some people that, again, don't look like you, act like you, talk like you, and just have them, hey, what do you think about this package, and get some good feedback, and then go to that senior leader in the unit and say, hey, can you help me understand? I thought I did really good. Can you give me some feedback? Because I have a perception right now that you are only selecting males, and so to help me through that and help me understand. And because one, that just tells that leader that, ooh, I didn't know that was a perception, and so let's talk about that openly with the unit. And two, give you some kind of perspective and maybe give you some feedback on your stuff in particular. And then 3, maybe that will help put your either mind at ease or put them on notice that, ooh, we've got this problem and we need to start addressing it, and not by just saying, oh, well, we had the first, second, and quarter of the month we had a male airman, and the third and fourth quarter needs to be a female airman. That's not the case. But again, one of those crucial conversations that we need to be having, you also have to be a part of that conversation. But if you don't say anything about it, or at least ask that question, then you'll never know, and they won't either.
The one more thing that I wanted to add to that is, the one thing I do as a group soup is make sure that when we pick our group level winners, I send all the winning packages out to all the squadron soups so that they can see what the winning packages look like. And a lot of times after they announce, your flight leadership or your squadron leadership will do that. So be like, hey, can we just see what the winning packages look like, so we know how to adjust our writing style to make our people more competitive, what's winning at that level. So again, instead of making that I'm not saying you're making an assumption, but it may just feel like they're being biased, like Chief Mitchell said. But look and see what's on those packages and see if your people are competitive, and if they're reaching the levels that the other airmen in the unit are.
Chief Pollard, do you have anything to add?
I saw a pop-up that said that she left the group, so I don't know if something happened with her connection.
Okay. We'll move on to our last question, and then I'll open the floor up to you chiefs for parting words. So our last question will be from Tech Sergeant Moore.
Good morning, Chief. Technical Sergeant Tony Moore from Herbert Air Force Base, Special Tactics Training Squadron, representing Flight 8. My question is based off of experience. Earlier today, we talked about credibility and trust. So I wanted to get some feedback in your experience, if you don't mind. So my question says, may you share a time where you've lost credibility and trust with your leadership and or subordinates as a leader? And how did you rebuild credibility and trust with your people? And do you feel being a woman has impacted your efforts in regaining these traits? Or do you feel like being a woman has impacted as a reason for you actually losing credibility or trust?
So I'll give an example of being when I was coming down to NCO Academy several years ago. So I don't know that I lost complete trust and credibility with the folks that I was at the school with, but I will tell you that my thoughts, words, and behaviors did not add up, and my audio did not match my video for sure. So I can't remember what had happened. There was some kind of event going on, and when we had a guest speaker, we frequently had our vice commander for USAF come out and speak. And so there was a class that was late, and I know y'all are in an online environment, so you might not get this experience in your NCO Academy time, but it's very apparent whenever you have a 3-star general in an auditorium, and then you have a whole flight that is not there, and then all of a sudden they all walk in. So yeah, I lost my cool, and I felt like that kind of degraded a little bit that relationship I had with them. But I immediately understood because there was a technical sergeant instructor that was like, "Chief, are you okay today?" And that's all he had to say. So I was like, "Oh, yeah. Hey, thanks for that," because I needed that reminder. I probably lost my cool, and I probably shouldn't have, but here, just to go back and kind of attack on what I was talking about and what we need to do to get better. And then, hey, what are some of your suggestions? So I felt like that misstep probably put me back just a little bit, and quickly tried to regain some respect from my peers. But I thought it was very important too for me to be able to apologize and recognize whenever I made a mistake. And then hopefully I recovered from that. I don't know that I recovered from that, but hopefully I did. So again, I don't know that that has anything to do with gender or anything else, but that was just one example of the plenty of mistakes that I had made. And I'm gonna let Chief Owens jump in there because I don't remember what the second part of that question was.
So I actually tell this story often. It's one of the mistakes that I hate that I made. But I tell it for multiple reasons. One, because I hope that you as coming up as leaders can learn from it. And two, we have to own our mistakes, right? So anyways, there's not a handbook about how to be a squadron soup. There's not a handbook about how to be a chief. I was a det superintendent, but then moved to a squadron. If you're at Herbert, you probably know of the 11th SOA Special Operations Squadron, Intel Squadron at Herbert Field, and it's 530 people. So and you guys are probably very familiar with the force distribution. It was Staff Sergeant Force Distribution time, and when we were doing our discussions and our rack and stacks, and I sent out the email to all the flight chiefs saying, "Hey, make sure you send me your, who you're pushing for force distro, so we have the list and we're ready to discuss and have the package is ready." So we go into force distro, have a discussion, determine who's getting our must promote nows, and my boss is getting ready to sign, the form marking who his force distro, must promote nows are and promotes are, and we had missed an airman. So we had one single airman who worked in our innovation shop that was basically all civilians. So he didn't have a flight chief. Because he wasn't on flight, he wouldn't belong to, our training shop or one of our 4 shifts. So he didn't have a flight chief that was there to look after him. I don't want to say luckily, but so the member had made it clear that he was getting out, which is not a reason why not to consider someone, because they can always change their mind up until the day they get out. But he was one of our killer airmen. He was killing it all day long. He was reaching out to, the Pentagon, to career field managers, trying to move things up, forward for the unit there. And we didn't consider him. We didn't talk about him. So sat him down and talked to him and asked him, I was like, look, what do you want us to do? I will sit down and have this discussion all over again. And he's like, nope, I feel like I deserved a must promote or promote now, but I'm getting out. And, so he's like, it hurt to know that I was left out. And I was like, yep, 100% own it. And we should have never left him out. I will say in the future, what I did from there on out is had my MEL and made sure that I had all of my flight chiefs come to me and say, here's who I'm pushing and here who I'm not pushing, so I can check them off the list and make sure that I have someone to speak for every single person that's on my MEL. When you have over 100 people that are, eligible for promotion on that MEL, I think it's pretty easy to overlook someone. So I would just say, you as a supervisor, you as a flight chief in the future, we have people who are PCS in and out, making sure that who's on your flight, who belongs to you, and then as a superintendent that you're accounting for everyone, and to make sure that we don't overlook someone in the process. So that was a huge mistake I felt like on my part. obviously I apologize to the airman, I apologize to the flight, and I talked to the commander about it. But it was a mistake that I learned from big time to make sure that I accounted for everyone in the future. But again, like I said, there's no handbook on how to do this. So I don't think that, I'm not sure how much, I probably left less credibility a little bit with that airman and some of the other staff sergeants. But I don't think it ties directly to me being a female. I think we can, we all make mistakes, and I don't know if it's gender specific. But my big thing is I'm always transparent. I'm always 100% transparent about the force distro, about strats, and giving that feedback on EPRs and rankings and all that. So I will sit down with any single person in my group and give them feedback about where they fall, what their records look like. So I think transparency as a leader has helped me to know that, like, I will tell you, where you're falling short, or, what you need to do to get to where your peers are. So I think that helps as a leader. But yeah, I don't know what the second part of the question was either, specifically the gender specific part.
No, I was just wondering if, because you all are, for being females, if that affected your credibility, as if you received any bias from that. Like, it was harder for you to regain your credibility or trust. But that can kind of go with just anybody. Everybody makes mistakes. But I would just wonder, do anybody, how do you build it back up? And now I'm wondering, do anybody ever reassess the fact that once they lost credibility, do anybody reevaluate the situation and see, like, okay, is it better now? But you've answered my questions, Chiefs. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to give the floor over to Chief Owens for any parting remarks.
So yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to come here today. This was awesome. I love sitting panels, and I love getting to talk to y'all. Definitely prefer when it's face to face, but this new pandemic world that we're in, this is probably our only option right now in allowing PME to keep going on. I would just say, be the leader that you want to be the leader that you want from your supervisor, from your flight chief, from your leadership in your unit. We talk about toxic leadership a lot, and the units that are toxic, but just learn from that. Know the kind of leader that you don't want to be, and don't turn into that toxic leader. Take care of your airmen, take care of yourselves, look out for each other, especially during this pandemic with everything going on. You guys are the ones that are closest to each other, and so when you have someone that's not acting like themselves, reach out, ask how they're doing. I actually had a master sergeant that I know pretty well who, during this pandemic, reached out to me once a week and was like, "Hey, Chief, I'm just checking on you," because who's checking on the chief? I 100% appreciated that, because I think a lot of times we forget that our leaders at the top, need checked on too. So just take care of each other, look out for each other, and appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Mitchell, the floor is yours.
So I'd say, especially as you're closing out your NCO Academy experience and you're heading back to your units, that don't skirt your responsibility of being a leader, being a non-commissioned officer. And so nowhere in any AFI or 362618 or in the PFE or anywhere does it say that, hey, you can only take care of just some of your airmen, you don't have to take care of all of them, or you only have to care about just a quarter versus 100%. It does not say anything about that anywhere. And nor do I think that if you think about the Airman's Creed and you think about our core values, that it means you can only do a portion of your folks, right? So when we talk about gender diversity and inclusion, you need to just remember that those are your responsibilities as a non-commissioned officer, because you wear the cloth of our nation, and that's very important to the mission and to our success, right? So we're never going to be able to accelerate and even have the opportunity to win if we're not including all of our airmen. And that includes, like I said, whether it's gender or religion or, pick a status, and that we're taking care of the whole team, because that's our job as an NCO. And I don't want you to push that responsibility off on somebody else. So from a gender perspective, a lot of times I've, as a chief master sergeant, I've had other male chief master sergeants that says, "Hey, go fix your female airman." I don't even know that female airman. Is that your female airman? Yeah. Well, why are you telling me to go tell her to fix her hair? You're not an airman? You don't know what the standards are? You must have known enough to tell me to go fix it. Like, you're a non-commissioned officer. you are an airman in the United States Air Force, and so you need to make sure that you're helping others understand too that it's a responsibility, and I don't want you to either treat your stripes like speed bumps and and slowing down the process, or not doing those responsibilities just because of you're scared to talk about gender, or you're scared to talk about race, or you're scared to have those hard conversations. And have the courage to bring some of those things up to your senior leaders. And I understand that not every unit has like an air of psychological safety within that unit. But again, they'll never get straight if somebody doesn't say something. And if you don't feel like you have an advocate, you don't feel like you have the support in your unit, and there are plenty of people that you can reach out to outside that chain. There are plenty of organizations that you can go to that we can get you some help, and or at least give you some mentoring, some advice, or some coaching, whatever it is that you desire. So, go forth and do good things. You control what your experience is like in the Air Force, and you also have a lot of influence on what the experience of your airmen is like as well. So we want everybody to be able to walk away from their military service proud of what they did, and feeling like they left their fingerprints all over what we did, right? So congratulations again on your completion of NCO Academy. Keep learning, keep growing, keep asking good questions, keep asking hard questions, and making your senior leaders work for you. And that's our job. So, but I do appreciate having this panel today. So not a lot of times do you get the opportunity to sit and have, I know just from a few questions ago, right? First time I've had a female senior leader, and we hear that quite a bit. So it's a good opportunity to highlight that and be able to point that out. So again, thanks to Team Sheppard NCO Academy. Appreciate you all as well. And thanks everybody for your attention today.
Thank you, Chiefs, for your time and your insight. Students, if we did not get to your question, just keep them in mind, to remember that we have another Women in Leadership panels planned later this afternoon. At this time, you are released to lunch. Please be back at 1300.